He understood better than most leaders of his time that India is a land of unmatched diversity, which is reflected in India's geography, social structure, cultural landscape, and also political life. No community, organization, or ideology has ever succeeded, nor can ever succeed, in establishing complete dominance over others in politics or society. In the civic reception held in his honor at the governor's house in Lahore, with Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif by his side, Vajpayee ji made a passionate plea for peace and good neighborliness with Pakistan. At the end of his speech, he recited his own poem. The title of the poem is Jang Na Hone Denge. Jang Na Hone Denge. Vajpayee ji had gained this kind of respect of opposition leaders because he himself showed genuine respect to all of them. He was truly Ajat Shatru, a person with no enemies in Indian politics.
A very good evening to everyone. We will now begin the program, and we will start with a small clip, a small video film on Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, a man of the masses, firm in his political convictions. Shri Vajpayee was born in the family of a humble school teacher. His rise in public life is a tribute to both his political acumen and Indian democracy. His first brush with nationalist politics was in his student days when he joined the Quit India movement of 1942. A student of political science and law, it was in college that he developed a keen interest in foreign affairs. Atal ji graduated from Victoria College of Gwalior. Later, he obtained a master's degree in political science. He had many literary, artistic and scientific achievements to his name. Many of his books were published, among which 4 Decades in Parliament 1957 to 95, New Dimensions of India's Foreign Policy, etc. are prominent. He had embarked upon a journalist's career, which was cut short in 1951. Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister of the country from 16 to 31st March 1996 and then from 19th March 1998 to 13th May 2004. His tenure as a Prime Minister was so glorious that even after a decade, it is not only remembered but also implemented. There have been very few Prime Ministers who have left such a positive impact on society. Shri Vajpayee ji was awarded Padma Vibhushan in 1992. In 2015, he was decorated with the title of India's highest civilian honour, Bharat Ratna. Remembering Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, a leader, poet, and visionary.
May I request our distinguished speaker, Shri Sudheendra Kulkarni, and our President, Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar, to please come on stage. A big round of applause for Shri Kulkarni, please. Mitrao, namaskar. I am Abhay Vaidya, Director, Pune International Center. We have just come out of the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly elections, and it is very heartening to see the restoration of the political process there, even as we await restoration of the statehood to J&K. When we think of Jammu and Kashmir and Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, 3 words ring in our ears: Insaniyat, Jamhuriyat and Kashmiriyat, as the approach to the restoration of normalcy in J&K. Indeed, our distinguished speaker today, Shri Sudheendra Kulkarni, is among those persons who knew Shri Vajpayee very closely. Mr. Kulkarni served the then Prime Minister as officer on special duty in the PMO and has been a witness to many of Shri Vajpayee's initiatives for inclusivity, peace and social harmony in our nation. Sir, we are deeply honored with your presence here today to deliver the fourth lecture under PIC's series of lectures on the personality and politics of Shri Vajpayee. Prime Minister Vajpayee was one of India's most beloved prime ministers, and it is in his honor that Pune International Centre's Vice President Dr. Vijay Kelkar conceived this series to commemorate his birth centenary year. Shri Sudheendra Kulkarni is an independent socio-political activist, media commentator and writer. He is the founder of the Mumbai-based Forum for a New South Asia, which seeks normalization of India-Pakistan and India-China relations, which he believes is critical for a peaceful and prosperous South Asia. Mr. Kulkarni is a strong proponent of social and religious harmony within and outside India. He is a Gandhian and is closely associated with Harijan Sevak Sangh, founded by Mahatma Gandhi in 1932 to remove untouchability and establish a society based on equality and harmony. In addition to working closely with Shri Vajpayee, Mr. Kulkarni also worked as a secretary to the senior BJP leader and former Deputy Prime Minister Shri Lal Krishna Advani. An alumnus of IIT Bombay, Mr. Kulkarni has worked as the editor of Blitz. He started his political career with CPI-M and later joined the BJP in 1996. Between 2009 and 2017, he was chairman of the Observer Research Foundation, public policy think tank, and he established the Zhejiang Center for India-China Studies at the University of Mumbai. He was also an unofficial Indian delegate in the first Belt and Road Forum conference hosted by Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing in May 2017. Mr. Kulkarni's books include Music of the Spinning Wheel, Mahatma Gandhi's Manifesto for the Internet Age, A Monk from Bombay on Swami Vivekananda's voyage from Bombay to Chicago, and his forthcoming book is August Voices, What They Said on 14-15 August 1947 and its relevance for India-Pakistan rapprochement. The chairperson for today's event, Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar, President PIC, is a Fellow of the Royal Society. He was the former Director General of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, a pillar of strength and inspiration at PIC. Very recently, Dr. Mashelkar received his 49th honorary doctorate from Deakin University, Australia. Before I hand over the floor to Dr. Mashelkar, I would like to mention that our session today will have a short Q&A segment, and you are invited to ask questions to our speaker. I now request Dr. Mashelkar to present his welcome address.
Thank you very much, Sudhin, my very dear friend, and my dear family of Pune International Center. I like to do innovation. Innovation is always doing things differently, of course, to make a difference. So the innovation is this. How many of you have seen, heard, or read this book? Please raise your hands. One. That's all. You must read this book, because that is the best way of introducing both our legendary Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, as well as introducing Sudhin Kulkarni. And I will explain to you why. If you want to have the best introduction to Atal ji, it is in this book. And I will read it out to you. And Sudhin has summarized it so well. He says, India's poet prime minister who strove to implement his connectivity vision. He just focuses on connectivity. Physical connectivity through bold reforms that boosted the telecom and IT revolution. You remember that. He used to say, IT is India's future. Of course, I used to differ slightly as to say IT is India's future, but in Indian talent. It doesn't matter. Emotional connectivity. Through sincere effort against severe odds to promote heart union among India's diverse communities. And Dr. Vijay Kelkar referred to it, if you remember. Political connectivity. Through a determined mission, braving several failures to build national consensus and to promote coalition dharma. I think there were 19 parties in that coalition. Was not easy to handle it, and the way he handled it. And if you remember last time, Dr. Vijay Kelkar said, discussion, discussion, discussion. All right. And then diaspora connectivity through a pioneering initiative to strengthen the bonds between Mother India and her children living abroad. Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. In fact, he always used to say, it was always great to be an Indian, but now it is great to be in India. And the last one, neighborhood connectivity through an unrelenting endeavor, despite many thorns along the path, to normalize India's relations with Pakistan and China and to strengthen our traditional relations with other neighbors. I think that is something phenomenal. Nobody can summarize Atalji better, I would say. Now, I also said that this book introduces my friend Sudhin also. It does so in different ways because you heard a lot that you will find on Google about Sudhin, and many of you read his columns, and his media presence is very strong. His views are known, and I will summarize it. But there is something else that I personally witnessed that I want to sort of talk about. So what happened is that I'm a trustee of National Gandhi Memorial Society, and we decided in its 30th year that we'll bring out a book. And that book would be asking questions to 50 of our thought leaders around the country from different fields on what is the relevance of Mahatma Gandhi today in this 21st century. And I approach everybody. I approach businessmen like Rahul Bajaj, Narayan Murthy. I approached Gandhians like Ilaben Bhatt, Mohan Daria. I approached Amjad Ali Khan, for example, or Sachin Tendulkar, Sunil Gavaskar, and so on, across scientists and all sorts of people, including from abroad. And I'm very pleased that out of 50, 46 contributed. 4 did want to, but we had to bring it out by 2 October, so we could not. And one of the most important contributions was by Sudheendra Kulkarni. There is a chapter exactly by the same title, Music of the Spinning Wheel. And then he displayed, he talked about that particular myth that Gandhiji and technology didn't go together, and how he would have reacted to internet and so on. And he created, of course, that was a small chapter, and that was converted into this magnum opus of 700 plus people. That's the scholar who will be speaking to you today, because he will be regularly introduced like this. So I thought I will do something different. I think the rest is all that Abhay has talked about. Sudhin is very, very, very special. I'll tell you, I had a lunch with him and his family this afternoon. We talked about a few things. We are both deeply concerned about so many things that are happening today, both nationally as well as internationally. As far as my personal reflection is concerned, I was Director General of CSR during 1995 to 2006. And 1998 to 2004, when Atalji was the Prime Minister, Sudhin, as you know, was his personal aide, and he was Prime Minister's office. He was officer on special duty, wrote his speeches. A lot of thinking that went on there actually has Sudhin's imprint, and I've seen that personally. Many of these things I cannot sort of disclose to you, but I watched him from very, very close quarters. He's a great thought leader and a conscientious Indian. So thank you very much for Sudhin for doing us the honor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mashelkar, for your opening remarks. I request Mr. Kulkarni to please start with your lecture.
आदरणीय डॉक्टर मशेलकर जी, Shri Abhay Vaidya, distinguished intellectuals of Pune, sisters and brothers. My sincere thanks to Pune International Center and the Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics for inviting me to deliver this talk. At the outset, I pay my respectful tributes to all the great personalities for whom Pune was the Janmabhoomi and the Karmabhoomi. One of them was Gopal Krishna Gokhale, in whose sacred memory this institute has been established. It was Gokhale who went to meet Mahatma Gandhi in South Africa and persuaded Gandhiji to return to India. I have visited that place, Tolstoy Farm, near Johannesburg in South Africa, where Gokhaleji met Mahatma Gandhi. The Spartan nature of that ashram and the enormous physical hardships Gandhiji and fellow ashramites faced there is beyond one's imagination. Gokhale's respect for Gandhiji increased after seeing him in that ashram. And of course, Gandhiji's respect for Gokhale also rose, and as many of you know, Gandhiji considered Gokhale as one of his mentors. Gandhiji returned to India in 1915 after spending 21 transformative years in that distant land. And accepting Gokhale's suggestion, he toured all over India for 1 year without any political activity, without any social activity, just to familiarize himself with the lives of the poorest of poor in India. What he did thereafter is history, a proud part of not just India's history but human history. All those are golden pages in the story of India's freedom struggle. And a lot of it happened in Pune or was inspired by great personalities of Pune. मी त्या सर्व देशभक्तांना आदरांजली वाहून या व्याख्यानाचे पुढचे पाऊल ठेवतो. Friends, my special thanks to Dr. Mashelkar ji and Shri Vijay Kelkar ji for thinking of me for this talk. I take this opportunity to express fulsome praise for the founders of Pune International Center. Pune has always been a city of scholars, scientists, educationists, entrepreneurs, outstanding civil servants, diplomats, leaders who have held high positions in India's defense establishment. This enormous brain power needed to be brought under one institutional roof and made available for service to the nation, just as India International Center in New Delhi has been doing. I'm sure Pune International Center will continue to grow, make impact in diverse fields, and gain prestige both nationally and internationally. I learn that PIC is having a series of lectures to honor Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji in his birth centenary year. You have given me an opportunity in the form of this talk to pay my own heartfelt homage to Shraddheya Atal ji, a great son of India, one of the best prime ministers India has had, and someone with whom I had the great honor and privilege of working closely for many, many years. Dear friends, one of my most cherished memories during the 6 years I spent in Prime Minister's office is associated with my close interaction with Mashelkar ji. The fact that I got to know such a distinguished scientist was in itself a rare gift. I learned a lot from him about the landscape of science and technology in India relative to the global landscape, and what we as a nation needed to do to harness the revolutionary power of science and technology to solve the problems before India, improve the living conditions of our common people, and also offer India solutions to the rest of the world, especially developing countries. What struck me the most was that Dr. Mashelkar, his simplicity and his infectious enthusiasm. He served as the Director General of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research CSIR, a network of nearly 40 national laboratories for over 11 years. He was also the Secretary of the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, DSIR, Government of India. Yet, he was living in a simple room in the guest house of CSIR in New Delhi. I must also mention something about his enthusiasm. Usually, enthusiasm is not a quality one finds in secretaries to the Government of India. Do you agree with me? Hmm? But there was something in him that we must do the privilege of serving the nation at the highest level as a secretary. We must do something enduring, something transformative for the nation. And we can see the same enthusiasm and energy in Dr. Mashelkarji even now when he has crossed 80. You are truly a role model for all of us, Dr. Mashelkarji. Let me give an example of his enthusiasm and determination to render something big and enduring to the nation. I do so by recalling an interaction with him during my PMO days. After the successful nuclear tests at Pokhran on 11 May 1998, Atalji gave a new slogan: Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan. Actually, it was an old slogan, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, given by Lal Bahadur Shastri ji, to which Atalji added Jai Vigyan. Simultaneously, and I must emphasize here, at Dr. Mashelkarji's suggestion, the Prime Minister declared May 11 as National Technology Day. It was he who suggested this to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister immediately accepted it. Dr. Mashelkarji immediately swung into action. He mobilized all the nearly 40 national laboratories of CSIR to pledge as one large team CSIR to make India a great technology power. His slogan was, India matters to us and therefore we should matter to India. India matters to us, therefore we should matter to India. In some ways, it was the rebirth of CSIR. Esteemed friends, the title of my talk today is My Years with Atal Bihari Vajpayee, the relevance of his legacy for today's India. My association with Atalji and also with Shri Lal Krishna Advaniji began sometime in 1995. It was Atalji who first asked me to come and work for the BJP. I was a political worker, but I was not a Swayam Sevak of the RSS. And as you know, being a Swayam Sevak is a prerequisite for any person to rise high up in the BJP's hierarchy. I had no previous association with the Janasangh either. Indeed, I had begun my political career as a communist activist. In spite of this background, Atalji and Advaniji accepted me as one of their own from day one. And this is their greatness. Under their influence, I left everything I was doing in Mumbai and went to Delhi to work full time as a Karyakarta of the BJP in the party's central office. Between 1998 and 2004, I worked in the Prime Minister's office as a close aide to the Prime Minister. The trust and confidence both Atalji and Advaniji reposed in me and the affection I received from both of them became a source of limitless motivation for me. I left the BJP in 2012 due to ideological differences. Nevertheless, I regard the 16 years of my close association as a Karyakarta, as an ordinary Karyakarta of the BJP, as among the best years of my life. And I'm grateful to the party and the leadership. Dear friends, it is over 6 years since Vajpayee left this world. In fact, he had become politically inactive soon after the BJP was defeated in the 2004 parliamentary elections. His ill health also contributed to his becoming inactive, which means it is nearly 2 decades since he departed from India's political scene. What then makes his legacy still relevant to today's India? I would like to delve into this question in my talk. I shall not speak much about today's India. India of the past 10 years is something well known to all of you. There have been many positive developments in the past decade, about which we all can be proud. However, there have also been many negative developments, indeed, very disturbing developments. All I can say is that as far as the ruling party is concerned, the BJP of today is unrecognizable from the BJP when it was led by Vajpayee and Advaniji. And because the ruling party has changed so radically, the functioning of the government also bears little resemblance to governance under Vajpayee's leadership. It is by now obvious that Narendra Modi ji has deliberately adopted a style of governance very different from that of Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Indeed, different from almost every other prime minister in the past. His style of functioning is highly individualistic. Not only are his ministerial colleagues marginalized, but also his predecessors, including and especially India's first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, are being made to fade away from people's memory. Nehru, in fact, has become a Khalnayak, whereas for Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, Nehru was a Mahanayak. See the difference. And I'm saying this because for me, both Nehru ji and Atal ji are heroes. Atal ji had some political differences with Pandit Nehru, but these differences were secondary to his basic respect for Nehru ji and his recognition of Pandit Nehru's greatness. Let me, to illustrate my point, let me read out a few lines of what Atalji said after Pandit Nehru's death. उनतीस मई 1964 में मई 64 मई में नेहरू के निधन के बाद वाजपेयी जी ने जो श्रद्धांजलि नेहरू जी को दी, उसे अपने आप में एक यादगार भाषण कहा जाता है। उनके भाषण से पूरा सदन, पार्लियामेंट भावुक हो गया। मैं उनके भाषण के कुछ पंक्तियां मैं उद्धृत करना चाहता हूं। अध्यक्ष महोदय, मैं यह इसलिए कर रहा हूं मित्रों कि देखिए, जो आज नेहरू जी के बारे में क्या क्या कहा जा रहा है, द मैनर इन विच नेहरू जी इज बीइंग maligned, it pains me and it must pain every patriot, because all these are lies. Not that Nehru ji didn't make mistakes. He made mistakes. Every prime minister has made mistakes, including Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. But is that the reason why we should make Nehru into a villain? And it's for this reason I am reading out what Vajpayee ji said after Nehru ji's death. It's one of his best speeches in parliament. अध्यक्ष महोदय, एक सपना था जो अधूरा रह गया, एक गीत था जो गूंगा हो गया, एक लौ थी जो अनंत में विलीन हो गई। सपना था एक ऐसे संसार का जो भय और भूख से रहित होगा। गीत था एक ऐसे महाकाव्य का जिसमें भगवत गीता की गूंज और गुलाब की गंध थी। लौ थी एक ऐसे दीपक की जो रात भर जलता रहा, हर अंधेरे से लड़ता रहा और हमें रास्ता दिखाकर एक प्रभात में निर्वाण को प्राप्त हो गया। भारत माता आज शोकमग्न है। उसका सबसे लाडला राजकुमार खो गया। उसका सबसे लाडला राजकुमार खो गया। मानवता आज खिन्न है। उसका पुजारी सो गया। विश्व के रंगमंच का प्रमुख अभिनेता, विश्व के रंगमंच का प्रमुख अभिनेता अपना अंतिम अभिनय दिखाकर अंतर्ध्यान हो गया। महोदय, जिस स्वतंत्रता के वे सेनानी और संरक्षक थे, आज वह स्वतंत्रता संकटापन्न है। संपूर्ण शक्ति के साथ हमें उसकी रक्षा करनी होगी। जिस राष्ट्रीय एकता और अखंडता के वे उन्नायक थे, आज वह भी विपदग्रस्त है। हर मूल्य चुकाकर हमें उसे कायम रखना होगा। जिस भारतीय लोकतंत्र की उन्होंने स्थापना की, देखिए अटल जी क्या कहते हैं, जिस भारतीय लोकतंत्र की उन्होंने स्थापना की, उसे सफल बनाया, आज उसके भविष्य के प्रति भी आशंकाएं प्रकट की जा रही है। हमें अपनी एकता से, अनुशासन से, आत्मविश्वास से इस लोकतंत्र को सफल करके दिखाना होगा। नेता चला गया, अनुयायी रह गए, सूर्य अस्त हो गया, तारों की छाया में हमें अपना मार्ग ढूंढना है। अंत में अटल जी कहते हैं, वह व्यक्तित्व, वह जिंदा दिली, विरोधी को भी साथ लेकर चलने की वह भावना, वह सज्जनता, वह महानता शायद निकट भविष्य में देखने को नहीं मिलेगी। मतभेद होते हुए भी उनके महान आदर्शों के प्रति, उनकी प्रामाणिकता के प्रति, उनकी देशभक्ति के प्रति और उनके अटूट साहस के प्रति हमारे हृदय में आदर के अतिरिक्त और कुछ नहीं है। आदर के प्रति और कुछ नहीं है। ये अटल जी के शब्द हैं नेहरू जी के बारे में। And many of you know that when Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji became the for External Affairs Minister in Morarji Desai's government in 1977, something unusual happened. He went to take charge in his office, and he finds that the large portrait of Nehruji, the first external affairs minister of India, apart from being, of course, the prime minister, was missing. तो अटल जी ने पूछा, उनका चित्र कहाँ है? तो लोगों ने कहा कि अब सरकार बदल गई है, ये गैर कांग्रेसी सरकार है, तो हमें लगा कि ये गैर कांग्रेसी सरकार को नेहरू जी अच्छे नहीं लगते हैं, इसलिए हमने इस चित्र को यहां से हटा दिया। तो वाजपेयी जी ने कहा, इसको तुरंत वहां फिर से लगाओ। दिस इज वाजपेयी जी। एंड ऑफ कोर्स all of us also know the admiration, the enormous admiration that Pandit Nehru had for Vajpayee ji. Vajpayee ji entered parliament for the first time in 1957. He was young then, and his party had only 4 members, so they were backbenchers. But whenever Vajpayee ji spoke in parliament, the prime minister made it a point to sit there and listen to him. Vajpayee ji criticized the government, but Nehru ji admired him. And in one of the functions, he introduced this young parliamentarian to a foreign dignitary, saying that this man is going to once occupy a very high position in India. This was Nehruji's prophecy, which came true. Isn't there a lesson in all this, friends, for today's BJP leaders who have maligned Nehru and completely marginalized him in their narrative of history? In fact, in their narrative of history, India became free in 2014. So I would like to end this part of my talk by saying there's a proverb: blowing out someone else's candle doesn't make yours shine any brighter. Blowing out someone else's candle doesn't make yours shine any brighter. Friends, I shall sketch the relevance of Vajpayee's legacy for today's India in 4 areas. First, Vajpayee's relevance for the present and future of democracy in India. Second, Vajpayee's relevance for the present and future of secularism in India. Third, Vajpayee's relevance for finding lasting solutions to India's long-standing problem with Pakistan, and this includes solution to the Kashmir dispute. And fourth, Vajpayee's relevance for finding a permanent solution to India's border dispute with China. And in the end, I shall also make a few predictions about India's near-term future in the post-Modi era. And how Vajpayee's life and legacy might have some useful lessons for making that future a future of peace and harmony, progress, stability, and hope. And hope not only for India, but also hope for South Asia and hope for the world. So let me begin by sharing my thoughts on Vajpayee's relevance for the present and future of democracy in India. Vajpayee was a quintessential Democrat, both within the affairs of his own party and on the wider national political scene. In one of his speeches as Prime Minister, he said democracy is not just a game of numbers, in which those who get 51% of votes win and those who get 49% lose. It's not a game in which Those who are 51% can think they have the right to ignore and run roughshod over the 49%. लोकतंत्र, जो जीता वही सिकंदर के प्रिंसिपल पर नहीं चल सकता. Democracy demands a democratic mindset. It demands respect for the minority, for dissenters, for one's critiques, and even for one's opponents. It requires that those in power give space to one's opponents so that even the opponents can play a role in nation building. Democracy demands that cooperation must prevail over confrontation. Intolerance and arrogance must make way for forbearance, humility, and a genuine willingness to work with people of diverse viewpoints. From my experience of working with Atalji, I can say in all honesty that he worked with this understanding of democracy and with this firm conviction in democracy. Let me cite two examples. As Prime Minister, Vajpayee attached the highest importance to harmonious and cooperative relations between the center and the states. Center and the states. And all of you know the kind of relations that prevail today between the center and the states. On all important issues, he regularly consulted chief ministers, who of course belong to different political parties, including anti-BJP parties like the Congress and the left. The BJP did not have many chief ministers those days. In his time, there were three institutionalized forums for center-state dialogue: National Development Council, NDC, Interstate Council, and regular chief ministers' conferences. Today, in Modi ji's time, all three have become defunct. Once in an NDC meeting, which I was also attending, non-BJP chief ministers like Jayalalitha, Chandrababu Naidu, S.M. Krishna, and others complained that the 10-minute time allotted to each chief minister in the one-day NDC meeting was grossly inadequate. They said, "We have so many important issues to discuss with the center. We have come here well prepared along with our ministers and secretaries, but we simply don't get enough time to make ourselves properly heard. This is not right." The Prime Minister Vajpayee, heard them with patience and said, "I totally sympathize with you. But what is the solution? If you have any constructive suggestion, I am open to listen to them." At this point, Karnataka Chief Minister S.M. Krishna, who belonged to the Congress, said, "Pradhan Mantri ji, why should all center-state meetings take place only in New Delhi? Why can't we have them in different states? And also in informal settings over 2 or 3 days so that we have proper discussion?" Vajpayee immediately accepted this suggestion. He was open to good suggestion coming from whosoever, even from his opponents. And he said, the first such informal center-state retreat, he called it retreat, will take place in Karnataka. All the chief ministers joyfully gave their consent. To organize this retreat, the Prime Minister asked me and my colleague in the PMO, Dr. Pradipta Ghosh, to go to Bangalore, meet the CM and his colleagues, and make all the necessary preparations. Accordingly, Dr. Ghosh and I went to Bangalore. In the meeting with the Chief Minister and his officials, it was decided that we should explore two venues for this retreat: Infosys campus and Nandi Hills. Infosys leadership was of course thrilled at the prospect of hosting such a prestigious first of its kind retreat on their campus. They invited us for a campus tour. On a parallel track, Prime Minister Vajpayee thought that for this center state retreat to become meaningful, effective, fruitful, he should also invite Dr. Manmohan Singh ji, former finance minister, who was then the leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha, and a few other leaders of opposition parties. Now, in the regular format of the National Development Council meetings or the Chief Minister's conferences, there is no scope for participation either by the leaders of the opposition in the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha or leaders of opposition parties. The format doesn't allow. But Vajpayee ji believed that the participation of opposition leaders was necessary because it would enrich center state dialogue. Accordingly, Vajpayee ji sent me to meet Dr. Manmohan Singh ji to seek his consent for the idea. Dr. Singh liked the idea, but he said that he would have to get the approval of Sonia Gandhi, who was then the Congress president. Unfortunately, a few days later, Karnataka Chief Minister S.M. Krishna sent a message to the Prime Minister that Madam is not in favor of such an informal center state retreat. Reasons not disclosed, and hence this innovative idea suffered what can be called infant mortality. Nevertheless, the very fact that the Prime Minister had given it his approval shows his faith in dialogue even with his political adversaries. Only a truly democrat would have such a faith in dialogue with opponents. Today, friends, there are hardly any chief ministers' conferences. There are hardly any all-party meetings. And even when all-party meetings do take place, they are chaired not by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister deputes Raghunath Singh ji or someone else to chair those meetings. He doesn't believe in he having a dialogue with leaders of the opposition. This is the difference. Vajpayee ji's political opponents respected him for this quality. Here is an example to prove this. The Prime Minister had once convened a meeting of chief ministers on power sector reforms. As you all know, now the power situation in India has considerably improved. But 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, we faced crippling shortages. These reforms were stuck because the states ruled by various parties were unwilling to reform their own inefficient, loss-making and subsidy-consuming electricity boards. The prevailing opinion was that the BJP-led government at the center would not be able to persuade opposition-ruled states, especially Congress-ruled states, to accept reforms in this critical sector. Yet, when this Chief Ministers' Conference took place, and I was present, Congress Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Digvijay Singh, he said in the open meeting, Atalji, please introduce these difficult reforms. We will support you. And we know that only you can do this. हम आपके साथ हैं, आप करिए. ये दिग्विजय सिंह कहते हैं. And all the chief ministers agreed. Vajpayee ji had gained this kind of respect of opposition leaders because he himself showed genuine respect to all of them. He was truly Ajat Shatru, a person with no enemies in Indian politics. And in politics, it's very difficult not to have enemies, friends. As we all know, coalition dharma is Vajpayee ji's valuable contribution to the lexicon of Indian politics. He did not use the word dharma loosely. He believed in it. He understood better than most leaders of his time that India is a land of unmatched diversity, which is reflected in India's geography, social structure, cultural landscape, and also political life. No community, organization, or ideology has ever succeeded, nor can ever succeed, in establishing complete dominance over others in politics or society, which means that we all have to work together. He often said in Parliament and outside, all of us have to work together to face and overcome the problems and challenges before the nation. This cannot be done by a single party or a single alliance. This cannot be done by a single party or a single alliance. आज कोई ये कह सकता है, कोई नेता कह सकता है, सब कहेंगे हम सब सुधार देंगे. ये होने वाला नहीं है. Indian politics. Now, why did Vajpayee ji say this? Please think about this. Because Indian politics is not going to become a two-party system. Never. Never. Either at the center or in states, it is not going to become a two-party system. And never will it embrace the one-party system as in communist-ruled China. He knew that coalitions were going to be the rule rather than the exception. And in a coalition, the dominant party cannot impose its will on smaller parties. The National Democratic Alliance, or NDA, which he headed, was an example of how to take everyone along with respect, dignity, and a sense of partnership. Hence, Vajpayeeji's principles and practice of coalition dharma, coalition governance, will always remain relevant. And I can tell you, friends, someone who had that deep faith in coalition dharma, in taking not only his own partners along, but also the opposition along, would have never talked about making India Congress Mukt. ये कभी नहीं हो सकता है. लेकिन कुछ लोगों को लगा कि अब हम इतने बड़े हो गए हैं कि अब हम भारत को कांग्रेस मुक्त बना देंगे. ना कांग्रेस, ना भारत कांग्रेस मुक्त हो सकता है, ना भाजपा मुक्त हो सकता है. हम सबको साथ रहना होगा. These days, I now come to a new point. तोड़-फोड़ की राजनीति has become quite common. We cannot really call it Rajniti because Niti stands for ethics, for morality. It is actually Raj Aniti. What we are seeing is a complete absence of morality in politics, and our own state, Maharashtra, has unfortunately become a prime advertiser of the politics of Tod-Fod. How would Vajpayee ji have reacted to this kind of politics, in which parties are split, MLAs are herded and taken away to distant state like Assam, and governments are toppled to install new governments? How would he have reacted? Well, there is a YouTube video. You all can watch it, featuring one of Vajpayee ji's most famous speeches in Parliament. In this speech, he says, यदि तोड़-फोड़ से सत्ता मिलती भी है, यदि तोड़-फोड़ से सत्ता मिलती भी है, तो मैं ऐसी सत्ता को चिमटे से भी छूना पसंद नहीं करूंगा. This was Vajpayee ji, and he walked the talk. Let me give an example. In 1999, his government was toppled after 13 months with a single vote in the Lok Sabha. With a single vote in the Lok Sabha. And that vote also was highly questionable. Many perhaps may not remember what happened in 1999 in the no confidence motion which Vajpayee ji lost. by one vote. That one vote belonged to Giridhar Gomang, the Congress MP who had already been sworn in as Orissa's chief minister. देखिए, he had already become Orissa's chief minister, but he had not resigned his membership of the Lok Sabha. And he came to vote. And that one vote made all the difference. And the government fell. I was witness to the fact that Vajpayee ji did not engineer any splits or defections in opposition parties just to remain in power. He instead went to the people. There were new elections to parliament who voted him back to power. All these examples of Vajpayee's legacy, are they not relevant when we look at the state of democracy in today's India? Today, sadly, there is hardly any dialogue between the ruling party and the opposition. India now can boast of a brand new parliament building, but parliament has ceased to be a forum of meaningful debate. In fact, in the last parliament before the elections, summarily 100 and nearly 140 MPs were suspended one go. 140 opposition MPs suspended. And when they were out of parliament, an important bill was passed without any debate. This is what parliament has come down to. Center-state relations, as I said earlier, have never been as disharmonious as they are today. Some governors, Rajyapal, in opposition ruled states, behave like viceroys. As for press freedom, we know what the situation is today. If there are any journalists here, they know this better. But let me give you one instance of how it was during Vajpayee's time. And this was recounted to me by none other than Ravish Kumar. और आप सब जानते हैं रवीश कुमार को. In 1998-1999, Ravish Kumar was a young reporter with NDTV. And he was not as famous as he is today. Ravish had once done a report for NDTV that was highly critical of the government. One day, he happened to be invited, along with other members of the media, to a function at the Prime Minister's residence. Vajpayee ji saw Ravish from a distance and asked one of PMO officers to call him over. On being summoned, Ravish thought he was going to be reprimanded by the Prime Minister for doing a critical report. But he was shocked when Vajpayee ji patted him on the back and said, "Badhai ho, मैंने आपका रिपोर्ट देखा, आपने अच्छा किया, ऐसे ही सरकार की आलोचना करते रहो. Keep on criticizing the government like this. ऐसी खबरों से ही सरकार अपनी गलतियों को सुधार सकती है." ये प्राइम मिनिस्टर एक नए रिपोर्टर को कह रहे हैं. हाँ? Friends, now I come to the relevance of Vajpayee's legacy on the question of secularism. My second point. These days, we hardly hear the word secularism, even though it remains in the preamble of our constitution. Prime Minister Modi ji has never once affirmed his commitment to secularism. आप 2014 के बाद उनके सभी भाषण देखिए, वो पार्लियामेंट में जाके संविधान के सामने नमस्कार करते हैं, लेकिन एक बार भी उन्होंने सेक्युलरिज्म का नाम नहीं लिया है. Generally, an impression has been created that secularism is anti-Hindu. Vajpayee ji was, of course, a staunch Hindu. One of his earliest poems, which remains very popular even today, attests to this. It reads, Hindu tanman Hindu जीवन रग रग Hindu मेरा परिचय. Hindu tanman Hindu जीवन रग रग Hindu मेरा परिचय. My body and mind are Hindu. My life is Hindu. My identity, Hindu identity, flows in each and every vein in my body. This was Vajpayee. Yet, like every true Hindu, he was never anti Muslim nor anti Islam. He regarded Muslims to be an integral and inseparable and equal part of India. His long experience in politics further convinced him that India cannot abandon its commitment to secularism. When the BJP was founded in 1980, he, as its founding president, made sure, आप ये बीजेपी के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में आप देख सकते हैं, वेबसाइट पर है, he made sure that positive secularism was included as one of the BJP's basic ideological commitments. The party interpreted its positive secularism as justice for all, appeasement to none. Vajpayee's belief in secularism was a natural corollary of his belief in democracy and diversity. It was not the Congress brand of secularism. The Congress sometimes has used Muslims as a vote bank. He was certainly not his was not certainly the communist brand of secularism, which has deliberately chosen to de-recognize and defame India's Hindu personality. Indeed, this has been one of the principal reasons for the left's stagnation and decline in India. Vajpayee ji never shied away from acknowledging his Hinduness. At the same time, he did not hesitate to emphatically state his faith in secularism. When his 13-day government was toppled, आपको याद होगा, his government was toppled twice. First in 1996 and second time in 1999. 1996, that government lasted only 13 days. And when that government was toppled by a group of opposition parties who dubbed the BJP as an anti-secular party, वाजपेयी जी ने पार्लियामेंट में अपने भाषण में, और वो भाषण भी बहुत यादगार भाषण है, उस भाषण में वाजपेयी जी ने कहा, आप हमें सेक्युलरिज्म का पाठ सिखा रहे हो. यू आर टीचिंग अस व्हाट सेक्युलरिज्म इज. हमें तो, यदि सेक्युलरिज्म मीन्स सर्वधर्म समभाव, इफ सेक्युलरिज्म मीन्स सर्वधर्म समभाव, तो सर्वधर्म समभाव हमें घुट्टी में मिली है. घुट्टी, you know what घुट्टी is? The first drop that is given to a newborn child. तो घुट्टी में हमें सर्वधर्म समभाव मिली है. He firmly believed that India is secular and India will always remain secular. I must emphatically mention, friends, here that he did not subscribe to the kind of Hindutva ideology that some in his own party and the Sangh Parivar professed. He was sad that many voices within the Sangh Parivar ascribed the BJP's defeat in 2004 parliamentary elections to what was perceived as Vajpayee government's abandonment of Hindutva. आपको याद होगा कि जब 2004 में वाजपेयी जी की सरकार गिरी, यानी उनका पराजय हुआ पार्लियामेंट इलेक्शन में, तो बीजेपी के अंदर मंथन चला, संघ परिवार में मंथन चला, और कईयों ने कहा कि ये सरकार इसलिए असफल हुई, पार्टी इसलिए हारी क्योंकि पार्टी ने और वाजपेयी सरकार ने हिंदुत्व को छोड़ दिया. Friends, I remember a Chintan Shibir of the BJP held in Goa in August 2004 to deliberate the causes of the electoral defeat. I was also present in that Chintan Shibir. The issue of Hindutva came up for discussion, but Atalji chose not to intervene in it. वो चुप बैठे, कुछ बोले नहीं. During the tea break, when I happened to be sitting alone with him, he was silent for a long time, and then I was completely taken aback by a question he asked me. ये हिंदुत्व क्या होता है? हाँ? अटल जी ने मुझे पूछा, ये हिंदुत्व क्या होता है? The question contained its own answer. Of course, I didn't know how to reply. I kept quiet, but the question contained its own answer. Namely, that Vajpayee ji did not believe in Hindutva, or at least the way in which his critics in the RSS VHP were interpreting and articulating it. It was his way of saying that India could be governed only by taking every section of society along. Vajpayee ji was deeply pained by the communal violence in Gujarat in 2002. I had accompanied him when he visited the relief camps in Ahmedabad and met the victims of violence. In his speech, he said in visible agony, if such killings in the name of religion happen in India, with what face can I represent my country when I go abroad? It was during that visit, as all of you know, that while addressing the media, he said Narendra Modi, the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, should perform his Raj Dharma. A responsible and democratically elected leader should never espouse the interests of only one section of society and neglect others. Above all, no section of Indian society should feel alienated, insecure, and deprived of justice. That to him was Raj Dharma, the irreducible duty of a ruler. In contrast, today we live in a time of bulldozer justice. Distinguished intellectuals of Pune, I now turn to my third important theme of my lecture. Vajpayee's relevance for finding a lasting solution to India's long-standing problem with Pakistan, and as I said, this includes a solution to the Kashmir dispute. There are some people in India who regard the nuclear test at Pokhran in May 1998 to be his greatest prime ministerial achievement. I disagree. Nuclear weapons do not guarantee security. Because of their catastrophic destructive power, they are indeed a source of fear and insecurity. They may make one nation, that particular nation, illusorily feel secure, but they make the entire world insecure. As more and more nations seek to build or acquire nuclear weapons, they will threaten the security of the world even more. Therefore, the world community will have to, sooner rather than later, agree to universal and irreversible nuclear disarmament. In my view, Vajpayee, his most notable achievements on the security and foreign policy fronts were his sincere efforts, persistent efforts to normalize relations with Pakistan and China. He was convinced that resolution of the historically inherited disputes with these two important neighbors was a precondition for India's rapid and comprehensive rise as one of the greatest powers, benign powers in the world. The conviction and persistence with which he pursued his efforts to have result-oriented dialogue with Pakistan, in spite of the betrayal at Kargil, was indeed statesmanlike. That he earned the trust of both Nawaz Sharif and General Pervez Musharraf. They were the conspirators of Kargil. And yet, we know that he could later change their minds, and that he earned the trust of a large section of Pakistani society was a remarkable achievement for an Indian Prime Minister. And if you want to know what Nawaz Sharif says today, you only had to read the newspapers yesterday. After Dr. Jaishankar's visit to Islamabad for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, the Indian journalists who accompanied Dr. Jaishankar were called for a meeting with Nawaz Sharif. Nawaz Sharif is not the Prime Minister now. His brother Shehbaz Sharif is the Prime Minister. But Nawaz Sharif still is important. And he called all the Indian journalists and he told them, I'm very happy that Dr. Jaishankar has come and I would like Modi ji to come to Pakistan and we should pick up the threads from where we had left them. ये कल की खबर है. No less creditable is the fact that Vajpayee ji also earned the trust of the people of Kashmir. On his first visit to Kashmir after becoming Prime Minister in 1998, Vajpayee ji was asked by the press in Srinagar, how will you solve the Kashmir problem within the bounds of the Indian Constitution? आप कश्मीर की समस्या को संविधान के दायरे में कैसे हल करेंगे? तो इस सवाल सुनने के बाद जैसे वाजपेयी जी किया करते थे, he was मौन for some time and then he said, हम कश्मीर की समस्या को इंसानियत के दायरे में हल करेंगे. सवाल यह था कि आप संविधान के दायरे में कैसे इसको हल करेंगे. जवाब प्रधानमंत्री जी का था कि हम इसे इंसानियत के दायरे में हल करेंगे. These words came as healing words for the people of Kashmir. His assurance, and this was mentioned by I think Abhay Vaidya, who introduced me earlier, his assurance of bringing peace and normalcy to Kashmir on the basis of insaniyat, humanism, jamhuriyat, democracy, and Kashmiriyat, respect for the syncretic and distinctive culture of Kashmir, deeply appealed to the people of Kashmir. They believed that under his leadership, India and Pakistan could come to an amicable settlement of the Kashmir dispute. The fact that the Kashmir dispute and India's problems with Pakistan are inseparably linked with one another is beyond any doubt or debate. The Kashmir dispute was created by the peculiar circumstances in which India won freedom from British rule, of course, by paying a heavy cost, and the cost was partition of India. The genesis of this problem and the specific roles played by different parties and players is beyond the scope of this lecture. What matters now, friends, is how India and Pakistan can become good neighbors, living in peace, security, and mutual cooperation, and how Kashmiris, and when I say Kashmiris, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, and Buddhists, can live in peace, justice, dignity, and with the same democratic rights as the people of the rest of India. This is the question. Article 370 of the Indian Constitution has been abrogated. It was long overdue. It is not going to be restored ever again. It is also true that Pakistan has no locus standi to criticize India's decision. It is an internal matter of India. But does this solve the Kashmir problem once and for all? Think of this. Does this solve the Kashmir problem once and for all? My answer is no. It has solved part of the problem, not the full problem. Many Indian politicians have said that there is nothing to discuss with Pakistan as far as Kashmir is concerned. And they further add that the only issue remaining to be discussed with Pakistan is when Pakistan is going to give POK back. Pakistan occupied Kashmir back to India. Similarly, of course, Pakistan is not going to give India POK. Nor can India wrest POK from Pakistan by using military force. ये दोनों सच है. Pakistan is not going to give POK back, nor can India wrest POK from Pakistan by using military force. लेकिन ये जितना सच है उतना ही यह भी सच है कि Pakistan cannot get Indian side of Kashmir, not even by using military force. This also is beyond any doubt. So, what is the way ahead? This is where Vajpayee's wisdom shows the way. Soon after becoming Prime Minister in 1998, Vajpayee set normalization of India-Pakistan relations as his first priority. Accordingly, he boldly embarked on a bus yatra to Pakistan. I accompanied the Prime Minister on the same bus. अब जरा सोचिए कि भारत का प्रधानमंत्री बस में बैठकर अमृतसर से लाहौर जाते हैं. पाकिस्तान में कोई भी इस बम फेंक कर इस बस को उड़ा सकता था. That was a risk the Prime Minister was taking, but he took the risk just to tell the people of Pakistan that I have come here as a messenger of peace and do business with me. In the civic reception held in his honor at the governor's house in Lahore, with Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif by his side, Vajpayee made a passionate plea for peace and good neighborliness with Pakistan. At the end of his speech, he recited his own poem. The title of the poem is Jang Na Hone Denge. Jang Na Hone Denge. मैं इस कविता के कुछ पंक्तियां सुनाना चाहता हूं और क्यों सुनाना चाहता हूं मैं आपको बाद में बताऊंगा. जंग न होने देंगे, हम जंग न होने देंगे, विश्व शांति के हम साधक हैं, जंग न होने देंगे. I'm not going to read out the entire poem, but some lines. कफन बेचने वालों से कह दो चिल्लाकर, दुनिया जान गई है उनका असली चेहरा. कफन बेचने वालों से कह दो चिल्लाकर, दुनिया जान गई है उनका असली चेहरा. कामयाब हो उनकी चालें, ढंग न होने देंगे, जंग न होने देंगे. हमें चाहिए शांति, हमें चाहिए शांति, जिंदगी हमको प्यारी. हमें चाहिए शांति, सृजन की है तैयारी. हमने छेड़ी जंग भूख से, बीमारी से, आगे आकर हाथ बटाए दुनिया सारी. हरी भरी धरती को खूनी रंग न लगने देंगे, जंग न होने देंगे. और इस कविता की आखिरी पंक्तियां जो है वो आप सुन लीजिए. भारत पाकिस्तान पड़ोसी, भारत पाकिस्तान पड़ोसी, साथ साथ रहना है. प्यार करे या वार करे, दोनों को ही सहना है. प्यार करे या वार करे, दोनों को ही सहना है. 3 बार लड़ चुके लड़ाई, कितना महंगा सौदा. 3 बार लड़ चुके लड़ाई, कितना महंगा सौदा. रूसी बम हो या अमरीकी, खून एक बहना है. रूसी बम हो अमरीकी, खून एक बहना है. जो हम पर गुजरी, बच्चों के संग न होने देंगे, जंग न होने देंगे. जो हम पर गुजरी, बच्चों के संग न होने देंगे, जंग न होने देंगे. He had written this poem before both India and Pakistan became nations armed with nuclear weapons. इस कविता में रूसी बम और अमेरिकी बम की जिक्र है, लेकिन उसके बाद तो हमारे पास भी बम आ गया है और पाकिस्तान के पास भी आ गया है. And therefore, the fourth full-scale war between India and Pakistan is definitely going to be suicidal for both of us. When Atalji was speaking and when he read out this poem, I was sitting in the back row in the civic reception, just to get a sense of how representatives of Pakistan's elite present at the reception were going to respond to the Prime Minister's speech. इसलिए मैं पीछे बैठ गया था. I saw tears in the eyes of several Pakistanis. Vajpayee ji believed, and he famously said, हम इतिहास बदल सकते हैं लेकिन भूगोल नहीं. हम इतिहास बदल सकते हैं, भूगोल नहीं. हम दोस्त बदल सकते हैं लेकिन पड़ोसी को नहीं बदल सकते हैं. इसलिए पाकिस्तान हमारा पड़ोसी रहने वाला है, भारत पाकिस्तान का पड़ोसी रहने वाला है. चीन हमारा पड़ोसी है और हम चीन के पड़ोसी रहने वाले हैं. दिस इज एज ट्रू एज when Vajpayee ji said it. All of us know that Pakistan betrayed Vajpayee ji's peace appeal soon after the bus yatra by waging a foolish attack on Kargil, which led to its own defeat. But Vajpayee ji was not deterred by this betrayal. He invited Parvez Musharraf, Pakistan's military ruler, to a summit in Agra in 2001. I was present at the summit. The summit failed. Later that year, Pakistan-based terrorists mounted an attack on Indian Parliament. Despite this, Vajpayee ji did not give up his peace mission. In January 2004, he went to Islamabad to attend the SAARC summit. I had accompanied him on that visit. Friends, here I must recount an important personal experience. At night, when he was alone in his suite in Islamabad's Serena Hotel, I went to Vajpayee ji with a short note in which I had written, Shraddheya Atalji, both India and Pakistan are now nuclear weapon nations. A new war cannot solve the problem. Therefore, you should make another bold new attempt to achieve peace on a basis of justice to both countries. This was the gist of what I had written in my note. Vajpayee ji read the note and he said, "Aapne sahi likha hai." The next day, Vajpayee ji and Musharraf had a meeting which produced a landmark joint statement. In this statement, Pakistan for the first time explicitly committed that it would not allow any terrorist organization to use Pakistan's soil to launch attacks on India. Of course, despite this assurance, Pakistan-based terrorists attacked Mumbai in November 2008. However, what is also true is that Vajpayee ji and General Musharraf reached an understanding which later got crystallized in a well-regulated manner without any change in their respective maps. I'm not going into the detail of what this 4-point formula is, but the seeds of this 4-point formula were sown when Vajpayee ji and Musharraf had talks, and these ideas grew when Manmohan Singh ji became Prime Minister, and Manmohan Singh ji and Musharraf, they crystallized this as a 4-point formula. Frankly, since neither India can get POK by force nor Pakistan can get the Indian side of Kashmir by force, the 4-point formula is the only realistic basis for solving the Kashmir issue and thereby normalizing India-Pakistan relations. मैं संक्षेप में बताना चाहता हूं कि 4 पॉइंट फॉर्मूला यानी जो नक्शे में हम आज भी दिखाते हैं पीओके, वी शो पीओके एज बिलोंगिंग टू इंडिया and Pakistan shows the whole of Kashmir as either disputed territory or belonging to Pakistan. तो नक्शे में कुछ नहीं बदलने वाला है, लेकिन एलओसी में हम ऐसी एक नई व्यवस्था करेंगे जिससे दोनों साइड के कश्मीरी जो भाई बहन हैं एक दूसरे के, वो जा सकेंगे, व्यापार कर सकेंगे और in course of time demilitarize that part of Kashmir, the two sides of Kashmir. So this was the understanding. Now, is this understanding valid even now? Think about it. In the last 10 years of Narendra Modi's prime ministership, even though we are saying कि हम पीओके ले लेंगे, not even 1 square inch of the territory across LOC has been taken by India. This is the ground reality. 10 years have passed. पीओके तो पूरा पीओके छोड़िए, एक स्क्वायर इंच भी हमने नहीं लिया है. Therefore, be it Narendra Modi or any future Prime Minister of India, and be it Shehbaz Sharif, Nawaz Sharif, Imran Khan, General Bajwa, General Asim Munir of Pakistan, India and Pakistan will have to find a compromise-based solution to the Kashmir issue. We have to compromise. Pakistan has to compromise and find a solution and move on. इसके अलावा कोई दूसरा रास्ता नहीं है. There is simply no other alternative. Sadly, Vajpayee's peace mission with Pakistan remained inconclusive because of his failure to win a renewed mandate in 2004. One day in 2005, after Vajpayee was no longer the Prime Minister, I was sitting with him at his residence at 6 Krishna Menon Marg. We were alone, just the two of us. Vajpayee told me wistfully, if I had just one more term in office, I would have solved the Kashmir issue once and for all and normalized relations with Pakistan permanently. This is what he told me. One last point before I move on to China, and I'm now coming to the end of my talk. In March 2004, Indian cricket team went to Pakistan to play a test series. Vajpayee invited the Indian team to his residence for tea before its departure to Pakistan. Sourav Ganguly, Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, all others were there. They presented a bat to him with the signatures of all the players. On that bat, Vajpayee did not write, टेस्ट श्रृंखला जीत कर आओ. वाजपेयी जी ने यह नहीं लिखा कि आप मैच जीत कर आओ. ही रोट विथ हिज सिग्नेचर, दिल जीत कर आओ. दिल जीत कर आओ. And the Indian cricket team did win the hearts of Pakistani fans. And once I was told by Pakistan's former Foreign Minister, Kasuri Saab, he's a good friend of mine, in one of the tests, Indian side won against Pakistan. What happened? The spectators, after the match was over, they took the flags of both India and Pakistan and they did a triumphant march around the stadium. Something unbelievable. This is the meaning of winning the hearts of your adversary. I have visited Pakistan over a dozen times. twice with Vajpayee ji and once with Advani ji. I have interacted with numerous Pakistanis of all strata of society, from former prime ministers to commoners. Invariably, I have heard the highest praise for Vajpayee ji. Several of them have said to me, Vajpayee ji was the tallest statesman of South Asia in recent times. The tallest statesman of South Asia. ये पाकिस्तानियों की जुबान से मैंने सुनी है. Friends, I now come to the last point of my lecture. Many well-informed Indian and Pakistani commentators are convinced that India and Pakistan could have bilaterally resolved the Kashmir issue had Vajpayee ji returned to office in 2004. The same conviction is also expressed by well-informed Indian and Chinese commentators about resolution of the Indo-China border dispute. Let me share a little bit of history. It was Vajpayee ji who, as foreign minister in the Janata Party government in 1977 to 79, who made the first breakthrough in India-China relations after the 1962 war. His visit to Beijing in 1979 marked resumption of ministerial contacts between our two countries after 17 long years. For 17 long years, there was no visit of any minister, either Chinese minister to India, Indian minister to China. He was the first minister to go to China after the war. He met China's paramount leader, then paramount leader, Deng Xiaoping. Deng told Vajpayee, I quote his words because it's all on record, we do have some issues on which we are far apart. We should put those issues on the side for the moment and do some actual work to improve the climate to go about the problem. Our two countries are the two most populous countries in the world, and we are both Asian countries. How can we not be friends? The creative solution that Vajpayee and Deng Xiaoping discussed to resolve the border dispute was, in a nutshell, this. Do not let the normalization of bilateral relations become a hostage to the resolution of the border dispute. Yani, let's not put off even bilateral cooperation till we have resolved the border dispute. Let's keep the border dispute aside and let's start cooperation on other fields. Develop bilateral relations in an all-round manner, build mutual trust, and simultaneously try to resolve the boundary dispute through dialogue. Last year, friends, I visited the birthplace of Deng Xiaoping in China, in Sichuan province. It's called Guangdong. In the large museum dedicated to his life, I was happy to see an exhibit displaying his meeting with Vajpayee ji. In December 1982, when a delegation from the Indian Council of Social Sciences Research called on Deng Xiaoping in Beijing, Deng referred to his meeting with Vajpayee and reiterated his pragmatic view on the border problem. And this is what he said. When I met your former foreign minister in 1979, I put forward a package solution. Please pay some attention to this word, package solution. If both countries make some concessions, it will be settled. The border dispute will be settled. The problem between India and China is not a serious one. These were Deng's words. Now, what is this package solution? The package solution was that the part of China, the part of Jammu and Kashmir that is Aksai Chin, which has been under Chinese control from the early 1950s. It remains with China. And Arunachal Pradesh, on which they had staked claim, it remains with. Of course, the name of that place was not Arunachal Pradesh those days. It was some other. It was some other name. Nefa, right? So that remains with India, and we come to some adjustment of the border, both the western sector, central sector, eastern sector. This was the package solution. When Vajpayee ji became prime minister, he made a bold move to bring the border dispute at the center stage of India-China official talks. He visited China as prime minister in 2003. I accompanied him on that visit. That visit witnessed a big breakthrough in our bilateral relations. During this visit, India recognized for the first time that the Tibet Autonomous Region is an integral part of the People's Republic of China. Some foreign policy experts, including some serving diplomats, were not in favor of this recognition. They felt that it would prevent India from using the Tibet card against China. But the realist in Vajpayee was convinced that this decision, apart from being in line with the unchangeable situation on the ground, was a helpful step towards improving bilateral relations. On its part, the Chinese side recognized Sikkim as a state of the Indian Union. The visit also saw an important breakthrough in trade relations. Bilateral trade started rising rapidly. It was about $10 billion in 2003, less than 10 billion. Now it is over $130 billion. And China has become the largest trading partner of India. An important upshot of this visit was the decision to fast track the talks on the border dispute by initiating the framework. It's called the Special Representatives Framework of the two prime ministers, driving the dialogue with a long term and strategic perspective and with clear political determination from both sides. In the sense that each prime minister would depute one special representative, and these special representatives were empowered by their respective prime ministers to find a political solution to the border dispute. Accordingly, Vajpayee's trusted national security advisor Brijesh Mishra and China's state councillor Dai Bingguo were appointed as the first special representatives. In his memoirs, Dai Bingguo has paid rich tributes to Vajpayee. I met Dai Bingguo quite a few times in China, and this is what he said. Mr. Vajpayee was a leader with a vision and strategic thinking. He did not want the past to determine the present. He wanted both India and China to show new thinking to create a better future. He started a new era of cooperation in India-China relations. He had an open mind on the border issue and wanted it to be resolved soon on the basis of give and take. I was very hopeful about making progress. In one of my conversations with Dai Bingguo, he narrated his meeting with Vajpayee. Soon after becoming the special representative, when he visited India for the first time, he called on the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister Vajpayee asked both him and Brijesh Mishra, how long will you take to make your recommendation so that we can solve the border dispute? So Dai Bingguo and Brijesh Mishra said, इसके लिए एक it would take about 5 to 6 years. Vajpayee ji said, no, I want this settled in the next 2 years. I want it settled soon. This was his determination. And Dai Bingguo in his memoirs has also written, now Mr. Narendra Modi has become the Prime Minister. He belongs to the same party as Mr. Vajpayee. He has an opportunity to become a new Vajpayee. These are Dai Bingguo's words. So, friends, I have covered the 4 points which, in my opinion, show the relevance of Vajpayeeji's legacy for today's India. But I had mentioned to you that I'm also going to make a prediction of what might happen in the post Modi era. In my view, India cannot deviate too much. It can deviate a little bit here and there, but India cannot deviate too much from the path followed by Vajpayee. India cannot deviate too much from the path followed by Pandit Nehru, which means we cannot go away from being a democratic nation. We cannot go away from being a secular nation. We cannot go away from resolving our disputes with our neighbors. These disputes actually are not created by us. These are created by the colonial period. Whether it is with Pakistan or with China, these problems are inherited from the era of colonialism. And therefore, we cannot go away from these problems either in the belief that we can win these, we can resolve these problems through wars, or by having 100% of what we claim is ours. It's not going to happen. And therefore, whether it is Modi or any other prime minister who is going to follow after Modi's departure, all of us have to work together to keep India democratic, to further enrich the democratic fabric of India, to further enrich the secular fabric. When I say secular, it means सर्वधर्म समभाव. हिंदुस्तान सबका है और सब हिंदुस्तानी है. All belong to India. India belongs to all. And each one has a duty towards the nation, equal duty. And when I say India, one more very important point, friends. We are now in the Amrit Kal. मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है कि नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने भारत को एक दूरदृष्टि दी है. This is, I consider this as one of his positive contributions, because we never had any long-term plan. Now he has said that let's look at our Amrit Kal for the next 25 years and how India can become a Vikasit Bharat, a developed nation. Now, when we reach 2047, the centenary of our independence, what kind of India should we build? Of course, we should remain democratic and become even more vibrant democracy. Of course, we should remain secular and become truly secular. At the same time, हमें ये भूलना नहीं चाहिए कि 1947 we earned our independence by paying a heavy price. And that price, as I said, was the price of partition. India was partitioned. Of course, we could not prevent India's partition. India's partition has not helped either the people of India, the people of Pakistan, or the people of Bangladesh. Now, what's the point I'm making? 2047. We are not going to make Akhand Bharat. Akhand Bharat होने वाला नहीं है. But can we not become a more integrated South Asia? A more integrated South Asia in which all the nations of South Asia become one family, one South Asian family, which means that India and Pakistan resolve their bilateral problems. India and Bangladesh, which unfortunately have again encountered a new set of problems, which is very unfortunate. how do we resolve these problems, and how under India's leadership, India has to take the leadership to bring the entire South Asia together. And if we bring South Asia together, friends, just consider, in terms of population, we are the largest region in the world. Nearly already 1.8 billion people. By 2047, we will have crossed 2 billion. And civilizationally, we are one people. Whether Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, we are civilizationally one. For thousands of years, even though there wasn't one administrative nation as such, we were one family. So can we not create a future in which we once again become a civilizationally integrated South Asian family, which means then we can make not just Vikasit Bharat, but Vikasit South Asia, peaceful South Asia, prosperous South Asia, harmonious South Asia. So therefore, 2047, our vision should not be only for today's India. Our vision should be for the whole of South Asia. And this is where, once again, Vajpayeeji's wisdom comes in. If we come together, we will be the greatest power on earth. When I say power, मैं आपको और एक बात बताऊं, वाजपेयी जी did not like this word super power. मैंने एक बार मेरे भाषण में I had used the word superpower. He struck it out. We don't want to become a superpower, he said. We don't want to be like America. We don't want to be like the Soviet Union. India's destiny, India's duty, India's responsibility is different. We have to become a different kind of power, a benign power, a power that helps the world, a power that promotes Vishwa Shanti, विश्व कल्याण, विश्व बंधुत्व. तो इस एक नई समझ से हमें काम करना है. और मैं समझता हूं कि all those great personalities who fought for India's independence had this dream. And with this dream, let's, friends, work together. I had an opportunity to pay my own respects to Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, with whom I had the great honor of working very, very closely for many years, including 6 years in the PMO. I can tell you that power never touched him. He was a most humble person. प्रधानमंत्री थे, लेकिन उनमें जो विनय मैंने देखा, सादगी मैंने देखी, सिंप्लिसिटी मैंने देखी, ह्यूमिलिटी मैंने देखी. He never once got angry, even in the most difficult situations. He never got angry with anybody. Mashelkar ji, when I look back at those years, I really feel that there was something deep and unfathomable in his personality. He was not a happy person. He was not happy being in politics, with the kind of politics. He was not even happy being prime minister. क्योंकि प्रधानमंत्री केवल एक सत्ता भोग के लिए नहीं है. So there was something deep in him. I always used to think that there is something deep in him that I have not been able to understand. I end my talk by reciting 2 lines from one of his poems. और इस कविता में अटल जी लिखते हैं, हे प्रभु, मुझे इतनी ऊंचाई कभी न देना. हे प्रभु, मुझे इतनी ऊंचाई कभी न देना, अपनों से दूर हो जाऊं. अपनों से दूर हो जाऊं, इतनी रुखाई, इतनी ऊंचाई कभी न देना, मैं अपनों से दूर हो जाऊं, इतनी रुखाई कभी न देना, इतनी रुखाई. It's very easy to be, to catch the virus of rukhapan in politics. तो ये जो प्रार्थना थी, मैं इस प्रार्थना से मैं मेरी बातों को विराम दूंगा. भारत माता फिर से ऐसे नेतृत्व भारत को प्रदान करें, यही मेरी प्रार्थना है. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. जय हिंद, जय जगत.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni, for this lecture. We will, as we are running out of time, we'll just take 2 questions. And I request everyone to keep your questions short and please wait for the mic.
Good evening, sir. Once again, thanks a lot for a beautiful, delightful talk. I am Rear Admiral Retired Ashish Kulkarni. And as you rightly said, in 1999, I had witnessed sacking of our Admiral. And that time, I was very young. I could not understand what exactly is happening in Delhi. If you could throw some light on that. I have read book Admiral Bhagwat, Sacked or Sunk. If you could kindly answer this question. Thank you.
To answer this question, because it concerns some aspects of national security, so excuse me.
Thank you very much for an extremely eloquent talk. Wanted to agree with you about cricket in Pakistan. I had gone there myself and I saw the extent of love that the Pakistanis showed to the Indians. They even wore our t-shirts and they were just screaming at every stroke made by the Indian players. So much so that when I came back, I wrote a piece in the papers, Gale Lag Jao in Lahore, So it was extremely, extremely loving. That's number one. Number two, I just want to ask you whether you feel that this kind of personality of Mr. Vajpayee, he's different because maybe he has the complexity of a poet in him. So that is something others don't have, however great leaders they may be. But not everyone has that depth and that complexity, and maybe that is one. And the third thing, I just want that just a comment. And the third thing I wanted to ask you was, do you have anything to say about his stand on the Ram Mandir and the Rath Yatra? I asked whether he would shed some light on Mr. Vajpayee's stand on the Rath Yatra and the Ram Mandir.
I agree with you that the personality of Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji can be best understood by understanding his the dimension of Vajpayee ji as a poet. And a true poet is a highly sensitive person, is a highly introspective person, reflective person. और वाजपेयी जी की कविताओं को आप पढ़ेंगे तो ऐसा लगता है कि वो खुद से बात कर रहे हैं. वो दुनिया से भी बात कर रहे हैं, लेकिन वो खुद से बात कर रहे हैं. Now, coming to your question on Ram Mandir, he was completely in agreement with his party's stand that there should be a Ram Mandir built at what the majority of Hindus consider as the Janmabhoomi of Ram. So there was no deviation on this particular matter. But he was not in agreement with demolition of the masjid. He wanted a solution through dialogue and mutual agreement with leaders of the Muslim community, social leaders and political leaders, which unfortunately did not yield the right results. He was not happy with the demolition. It's one of those complex issues in our society for which there is no clear black and white solution or a black and white answer.
Sir, in today's day and
Very cheap quality of debate that goes on nowadays. So, can you please teach us 1, 2, 3 points? Because you've been through this in 2015 when your friend Kasuri was visiting, and it's almost become like that. Every time we moderate liberals want to voice ourselves, we are told go to Pakistan. We are told all these things, and can you just teach us what we are supposed to really do?
I'm not here to teach anything, but let me make a few points very clear which perhaps I missed out in my talk. Pakistan and the people of Pakistan need to introspect honestly. They have committed a huge blunder by allowing religious extremism and terrorism. And their leaders thought that they can get what they want by making India suffer. All the terrorist attacks that have taken place could not have taken place without some kind of direct, indirect backing of the rulers. And of course, there's not one ruler, there are even the power in Pakistan is quite split. And Pakistan itself has paid a huge price because more Pakistani Muslims have been killed by Muslim terrorists than the number of people killed in India. And therefore, many Pakistanis are now realizing that that's a path they should not have taken. They thought that by supporting extremists in Afghanistan, they can dominate and control Afghanistan. That has not happened. And in the process, Pakistan has been maligned globally. Pakistan has paid a huge price. And therefore, in my view, our relationship with Pakistanis should be based on truth. We should tell them bluntly. I have I was invited to participate in the Karachi Literature Festival. I think it was 2009 or 2010. I said that it is from this city of Karachi that terrorists came and attacked my city, Mumbai. So we should be very clear, we should be very transparent. At the same time, we should also understand that not all Pakistanis are alike. So we have to create bonds of understanding, of trust, which will ultimately lead to good neighborliness.
Sudhinji, in 1999, on the eve of Atalji's birthday, IC-814 was hijacked. Jaswant Singh and Brijesh Mishra were the face. What are your memories of discussion with Atalji during those periods?
In one sentence, Atalji said that we had to, history will of course interpret this in different ways, and today it is being interpreted as his weakness. I wanted to save the lives of people on the plane. They were Indian lives. He said this in a speech. So that was his approach, and that's why he did it. And in facing a difficult situation like that, maybe some mistakes were committed. There is room for saying that mistakes were committed.
Good evening, sir. First of all, it's a really moment of pleasure for all of us friends to be able to be sit here in front of you, two of the
greatest national treasures of our country. Uh, I don't want to sound very pessimistic, but my question is quite critical. When I am going to talk about Pakistan and China, we aspire to become the leader of South Asia, but the reality is China has its own ambitions, and the present reality of Bangladesh and Pakistan is that they are being puppeted by someone else, and it can has some heinous consequences if we open that Pandora box. And the way you suggested the solution that we make the porous boundaries for Kashmir, we cannot control our own boundaries sometimes, and if we let them let in stuff which we cannot control, then it can lead to repercussions we cannot even think of. So what is the way forward for it, knowing that the bilateral relations just started?
Okay, so if to take your thoughts on Kashmir to its logical end, it would mean two things. Make LOC the international border. Huh? Okay. Or pay whatever cost it takes and take the whole of POK. These are the only two logical endpoints of your ideas. Now, is India ready? Is India ready to make LOC the international border? Or is India ready to fight a war and take POK back? If you answer these two questions satisfactorily and to the satisfaction of millions of Indians, then I step aside. Bangladesh. Of course, religious extremists have come to the fore, and that's bad for Bangladesh itself, because Bangladesh has been, it's not in the swabhav of Bangladesh to be extremist. This is clear from just one example. When Bangladesh was created, you know, they accepted, or they made one of Tagore's songs as their national anthems. Tagore belongs to India, or at least, you know, he did not live in today's India. He lived in undivided India. But Tagore, they think, is their own. We call Tagore our national poet. His song is our national anthem. But they have taken their own national anthem as a Tagore song. This is the basic swabhav of Bangladesh. Now, some things have changed. Now, why they have changed? Did India also make some mistakes in putting all eggs in the basket of one political leader? It is for us to introspect. But India, the people of India and the people of Bangladesh should work together to see that religious extremism is defeated, to see that minorities are protected and minorities can live with dignity. And when I say Hindus should live in dignity, it is also our duty to make sure that Muslims in India live in dignity and live in security. और जब हमारे मंत्री कहते हैं बांग्लादेशियों की ये टर्माइट्स है, हाँ, what will the Bangladeshis think? So we should be responsible. We need some introspection ourselves. Lastly, about China, my understanding of China is different based on my many visits to China. Of course, China is complex. There are some people who want China to be a superpower of the kind America was a superpower. But civilizationally, China is very different. And the civilizational links between India and China are very, very deep. And it is based on these shared civilizational links, shared civilizational wisdom, that we have to create a new future.
We'll just end the Q&A now. And I request Dr. Mashelkar to please felicitate Mr. Kulkarni with the PIC books.